It was the autumn of 1919 when the Collier family's story began to seep into the whispers of the small town of Dunsmore Hollow. The Colliers lived far from the village, deep in the woods where the fog never lifted and the soil smelled of iron. Their house stood crooked against the trees, its windows always shut, even in summer. No one visited them, and no one was ever invited. But every Sunday, a faint light flickered through the forest, like a heartbeat pulsing from within their walls. Henry Collier was the head of the family, a tall, pale man with eyes that seemed to follow the wind. He came from a long line of butchers, though he no longer worked the trade. His wife, Miriam, was rarely seen, and when she was, she carried a crimson handkerchief pressed tightly against her lips. They had 2 children, twins, who never spoke a word in public. They attended church once a year, silent and unmoving, as if they were there against their will. The townsfolk said the Colliers had money, though no one knew from where. Others said their wealth was older than blood itself. It began when a young boy named Thomas ventured into the forest to collect firewood. He never came back. Search parties went out for 3 days, but all they found was his axe sunk deep into a tree stump near the Collier home. When the sheriff knocked on their door, Henry greeted him with calm eyes and a clean floor. There was no sign of the boy, no trace of wrongdoing, but the sheriff swore he smelled something sweet, metallic and wrong. Weeks later, more children disappeared, always near the forest, always near the Collier land, and always the same flicker of light came from their windows, steady as a ritual. One night, an old hunter decided to watch from the woods. He said he saw shadows moving behind the curtains, figures dancing in circles, something red spilling between their hands. When he went to tell the townsfolk, he fell ill that same night. His blood turned dark, his veins rising black beneath his skin. By morning he was dead. The town grew quiet after that. People began locking their doors before sunset. They spoke of curses, of families that carried old sins in their veins. And yet no one dared confront the Colliers again. They lived untouched, like a wound no one wanted to reopen. But in 1919's last winter, something changed. The snow came early, heavy and endless. The Collier house went dark for weeks. No smoke, no flicker, no sound. When the thaw came in spring, a group of villagers went to check on them. The front door was open. Inside, the walls were black with mold, and the air smelled of rot. On the table, there were plates laid for 4, untouched. The food was covered in dust, frozen in time. Upstairs, they found the family. Henry, Miriam, and the twins, all seated upright, pale as wax. Their eyes were open, staring blankly at the ceiling. Around their necks were old stains, as if something had been drained from them long ago. But the strangest part was their blood. It hadn't dried. It hadn't turned brown. It was still wet, thick, dark, and warm to the touch. The doctor who examined them couldn't explain it. He said their bodies hadn't aged, hadn't decayed. It was as if they were preserved in something unnatural. The sheriff ordered the house sealed and the family buried outside the churchyard, far from the rest. But even the gravediggers swore the ground bled when the coffins touched the soil. Years passed. The forest reclaimed the land. The house collapsed, leaving only the chimney and the cold stone steps. But sometimes, when the moon turns red over Dunsmore Hollow, travelers claim to see a faint light flickering between the trees. They say it's the Collier family, still gathered at their table, still trapped in whatever ritual bound them to that cursed blood. Some claim to hear faint whispers, the sound of something dripping, and the soft rustle of feet circling in the dark. No one lives near the old woods now. Even the animals avoid it. And though a century has passed, the soil around the ruins remains damp, dark and red, as if something still breathes beneath it. They call it trapped blood, the sin that never dried. And the Collier name, once spoken in hushed curiosity, is now buried in fear. Yet every generation, someone curious enough steps into the forest to find the truth. None ever return, and so the story of the Collier family endures, not as memory but as warning. For in Dunsmore Hollow, blood is not spilled, it's kept